spending our dollars.
Yeah. It'll be quite an experience.
Yeah, it's the first time this has been, it's been an adventure.
I bet. Yeah.
So you're retired?
Yeah, November. It's starting to feel real.
Do you know who's going to take your place?
No, they're advertising for the position right now.
Is there nobody?
There could be.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting. Today is Tuesday, August 27th, and I would like to open the meeting with a gigantic happy 50th birthday wish to Dieter Wittenberg. So everybody say happy birthday to Dieter. And then we're going to start off with the flag salute by our county council.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the first thing we're going to start off with is the consent agenda. Is there, all items on the consent agenda have been recommended for approval by the County Executive Department. All items will be approved by a single roll call vote. Anyone may ask to address consent items prior to the board taking action, and the item may be removed for discussion. Board members, are there any items on the consent agenda you would like removed? No? Anyone in the audience like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
Okay, then bring it back to the board for a motion. Second. Motion by Holmes, second by Gustafson. Roll call, please.
Gore? Aye. Landon?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Gustafson? Yes. Jones?
Aye. Okay. On to public comment. Persons may address the board on items not on this agenda. Please limit comments to 3 minutes per person. If all comments cannot be heard within a 15-minute time limit, the public comment period will be taken up at the end of the regular session. The board is not permitted to take any action on items addressed under public comment. Anyone out there? Good morning.
Good morning, supervisors, everyone. Welcome to the Hood. My name is David Diamond. I'm a director on the Truckee Tahoe Airport Board, and I'm here to announce to you my candidacy for re-election to that board this November. My website is diamond2024.com, and I wanted to talk about one of the things that I've been working on at the airport. Our airport we received this year $9 million in property tax. We don't need all of that money to operate safely and efficiently. What happens to the balance of the money is largely up to the directors, and one of the reasons airport board elections can become so contentious. Last year, I asked for $2 million off the top of that money to be used for fire mitigation through a partnership with North Tahoe Fire, Olympic Valley Fire, North Star Fire, and Truckee Fire. My board mates unanimously agreed on that, which was fantastic. And today, projects are underway that were previously unfunded throughout those districts. There's a map of where those projects are on the airport website. This is, to me, the kind of thing that the airport board can do when it's in the hands of people who are thinking about the entire district. So I am running for re-election to make sure that we continue to think about the entire district. So your support, your endorsement, letting people know, and for everybody, please vote in November. And my website's diamond2024.com. I've got these little handout things that I'll leave over there. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations and best wishes. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
Wow, we're not popular today. Okay, we're going to move on to board member and county executive reports. No reports? No. Okay, wow, we're going to have a quick meeting. Okay. Well, we cannot move on. We're just, let's see, so we cannot move on to our first, well, I'll go to item Department items. Item 4, Agriculture, Parks, and Natural Resources, French Meadows Thinning Project Contract Award. Who's Carrie? Is Carrie doing this one this morning?
I'm promoting her now.
Okay, great.
Good morning. Can you see me now?
Good morning, Carrie. We sure can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm Carrie Timmer. I'm your Regional Forest Health Coordinator, and I'm here this morning with what I hope will be a routine request regarding approval of a contract to conduct additional fuel reduction work planned on as part of the ongoing French Meadows project. So if approved, this contract will be awarded to a firm that we have worked with before called Market Forestry Management LLC, and they're out of Colorado. The contract would be in the amount of $1,524,702 for work that would begin later this season and conclude in 2026. So just some background on the French Meadows project for anyone who may not be familiar. We, the county, operate this project on federal land, U.S. Forest Service land, under a Master Stewardship Agreement, or MSA, that was signed by the county and the Tahoe National Forest Supervisor in 2018. And this is area that surrounds the French Meadows Reservoir, which is part of the Middle Fork Hydroelectric and Water Project that is co-owned and managed by the county and the Placer County Water Agency. So what we're trying to do with this project is to avoid what you see behind me, which is sedimentation that came down the river system after the King Fire in 2014 that occurred in a different part of the watershed that feeds into this hydroelectric and water distribution project. So we're trying to reduce the risk of severe wildfire that would have this kind of detrimental effect. So the Master Stewardship Agreement is necessary because the land that we're working on that surrounds the French Meadows Reservoir is actually Forest Service land. And so the Master Stewardship Agreement authorizes the county to conduct forest thinning and other work, timber removal and other kinds of activities to reduce fuel and fire risk across a 22,000 acre area that surrounds this reservoir. So we are currently in our 6th year of operations. We are hoping to complete the project over the next 2 seasons. To date, we've completed over 4,200 acres of the planned 7,200 acres, meaning that we're about 60% done. And the difference between the acreages is that we evaluated 22,000 acres altogether. Not every one of those acres requires treatment. Some of them are in good shape and healthy and resilient. And so the total number of acres that we're actually treating is 7,200. What else? So yes, I think I mentioned that using these metrics, we are about 60% done with the project and intend to complete it over the next 2 years. So the work that would be conducted under this contract would be a little over 1,000 acres of mechanical thinning, and this would be geared toward reducing the fuel load, the volume of fuel that is there on the ground. Also, though, removing ladder fuels that can carry fire up from the ground into the tops of the trees, where that allows it to spread farther and faster. So we're trying to, fire is going to happen, and fire is good in many cases. What we're trying to do is reduce the severity and the speed with which the fire moves to try to keep it out of our communities and from having detrimental effects like you see behind me. So this work also increases the spacing between the trees, which helps to minimize that fire spread in the treetops, and it removes small trees that are not suitable for timber sale. The different treatment types that would be conducted under this contract include mastication, which is basically, as it sounds, kind of the chewing up of material that's close to the ground so that it spreads out and is therefore does not burn as hot or as severely. Also, in certain conditions on the ground where there's steep slopes or heavy rocky areas, we also use hand crews that come out with chainsaws and do hand cutting and chipping, which again changes that fuel profile from being vertical where it can carry fire up into the trees and puts it down on the ground, making it horizontal where it can be consumed at a lower intensity by ground fire, which is considered a good thing. And then also some mechanical thinning and chipping, which again just depends on the ground conditions. If a machine can get in there and do that work, we typically use the machinery. If not, then we use the hand crews. As it relates to the procurement process itself, we did a competitive bidding process as usual, working through our procurement services division. Excuse me, we released an invitation to bid on June 10th, 2024, and that was bid number 20531. The opportunity was advertised via the county website and across our bids and tenders procurement dashboard. We had more than 100 vendors who were notified of the opportunity via email and other outreach. 45 of those 100 registered through the bids and tenders dashboard, and we received and reviewed a total of 10 bids altogether. So as it relates to selecting the contractor, procurement services did the initial review to be sure that all the bids met the requirements. And so they recommended, and Regional Forest Health staff concurred, that Market Forestry Management LLC be selected as the winning bid because they were both responsive and responsible, which is the mandatory requirements. They submitted the lowest bid for the requested services, and their bid actually represents a cost savings of roughly $640,000 compared to the next lowest responsible bid. We received no protests about this proposed award, and procurement services confirmed that this contractor is properly and actively licensed. So again, just the funding details, the contract amount is a little over $1.5 million. About $1 million of that will be funded through a grant that we received from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy's Wildfire Recovery and Forest Resilience Program. That was approved by your board on October 11th of 2022. Another $210,000 will be used out of a subaward grant from the Placer County Water Agency to the county for this purpose. And that also was approved by your board on September 28th, 2021. And then finally, about $280,000 will come from previously received timber revenue. So that's revenue that's generated when we take down trees that are large enough that they have some timber value. We have a contract with the SPI mill where we can take these trees and they pay us on a board foot basis for that material, and that money gets put back into the project. So scheduling, excuse me, wow. Pardon me. As mentioned earlier, the work is anticipated to be conducted starting later this season and then completing in the 2026 work season, so across roughly 2 and a quarter seasons. So with that, staff respectfully requests that your board take the following 4 actions. First is to reject 9 of the 10 bids submitted for competitive bid number 20531 for French Meadows Thinning Project Services and approve the award of competitive bid number 20531 for French Meadows Thinning Project Services to perform the designated work as part of the French Meadows Ecological Forest Restoration Project. Secondly, to approve and authorize the Director of Agriculture, Parks, and Natural Resources or designee to execute the agreement with Market Forestry Management LLC in the amount of $1,524,702 for the period from August 27th, 2024 through December 31st, 2026. Third action is to authorize the Director of Agriculture, Parks, and Natural Resources to execute amendments with Market Forestry Management LLC up to $152,470, consistent with the Placer County procurement policy, subject to County Council and Risk Management concurrence. And finally, to determine the proposed actions are exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15308. So I want to thank you for your time this morning, and I'm happy to respond to any questions or comments that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie, for that presentation. Board members, questions? Supervisor Holmes?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Carrie, for your report. I'm just grateful that the Board of Supervisors working with our partners over the last, now 6, maybe longer years of looking forward and setting an example of what can be done in our forests to protect our watershed, protect our forests, And it's not just us, it's with our partners, Sierra Pacific Industries, Placer County Water Agency, and others. So I'm grateful that you're able to get this project moving forward. We see what happens to it when a wildfire destroys a watershed. It fills up our rivers with, we have to clean them up, and it's a hazard to our wildlife as well. So anyhow, I'm very supportive of this, and I want to thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Supervisor Gustafson.
Thanks, Carrie, and I agree with all of the comments Supervisor Holmes mentioned. I had two quick questions. One is, it seems that a few years ago, we weren't getting a lot of bidders on our projects, and to see that 10 submitted bids seems extraordinary. Am I recalling incorrectly, or are we really seeing the number of contractors and responsive bidders increasing for all this forest work?
I do think that there is a trend of increase. It really depends on the work being requested. There are far fewer vendors that can do actual timber harvesting of the larger trees and have the equipment that can both take the trees down and haul them out to the mill. So typically that work is a little bit harder to generate multiple bids for. We also just recently had a roadwork contract procurement where we only received one bid, and it was wildly beyond the original budget that we had for that work. So we're looking at that closely to see how we can address that situation. So it's still a little bit of a mixed bag, but I think you're right. In this particular case, this kind of work is kind of the bread and butter, the mastication, the hand crews, and so forth, where there are numerically more vendors that have the capacity, equipment, and ability to do this work. So this one is kind of a sweet spot.
That's great, because we obviously have a lot more work to do, so we're excited to see that. My second question was, is it concerning at all that this was 30% under the next bid? I mean, I'm glad we're getting a great deal, but I'm always concerned when bids come in so dramatically different than other bids, and then will there be change orders? So was that a concern?
So it's always possible there will be change orders, but we do have a cap on that, which is part of the actions requested. So that's a standard. We can't go beyond that unless we request a whole new budget amendment. So, and also the fact that we've worked with this contractor before gives me some confidence that, they know the terrain now, they know what it is that's being requested of them. And so I feel like they will have given us a competitive and appropriate bid. I think in many cases we get new vendors who maybe spend proportionally more of their time working down at lower elevations on projects that don't have the kind of challenges that French Meadows can present, being as remote as it is. And in some cases, like, vendors actually have to camp out there as opposed to coming in and out every day. And so I think, this may reflect the fact that some of the newer vendors who have not worked on the project before might just, even though we do a bid walk and we bring them out into the field so they can see what it is that we're asking and the location, I think they might just underbid it because they're just not familiar with what it takes.
Great, well, thank you, and I'm glad you have confidence in the bidder and in the contractor to provide those services, because it's a great savings to the county, so thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, I want to open it up to the public. Anyone out there like to ask a question or make a comment on this presentation? Anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the board.
Move approval.
Well, before we do that, I would like to say to Carrie, thank you for the presentation. It's kind of exciting that they've already completed 60%. I have the same frog you have this morning.
Sorry if I gave that to you.
No, not at all. But it's very exciting that we're getting all this work done. It's wonderful, and thank you so much for all that you have done for this project. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by Holmes.
And second.
And a second by Gustafson. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Okay,
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
We're going to move on to item 5, Health and Human Services. agreements for the intergovernmental transfer of public funds, and that will be online with Dr. Oldham. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Chair Jones, members of the board. Rob Oldham with Health and Human Services, and I'm here today to request the approval of 3 separate items, and I'll go ahead and read the actions so you don't have to. The first is to approve an agreement with the California Department of Healthcare Services for an intergovernmental transfer of public funds with Anthem Blue Cross and California Health and Wellness Plan for the period of January 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026, and to authorize the director of HHS or designee to sign the agreement and amendments consistent with the subject matter and scope of work with risk management and county council concurrence. Second is to approve an amendment to the agreement with Anthem Blue Cross for coordination of Medi-Cal benefits to eligible persons, to add capitation rate range increases, and to add an additional year for revised period of January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2026, and authorize the director of HHS or designee to sign the amendment with risk management and county council concurrence, and to sign subsequent amendments consistent with the agreement's subject matter and scope of work with risk management and county council concurrence. And third and final, to approve an amendment to the agreement with the California Health and Wellness Plan for coordination of Medi-Cal benefits to eligible persons, to add capitation rate ranges increases and add an additional year for a revised period of January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2026, and authorize the director of HHS or designee to sign the amendment with risk management and county council concurrence, and to sign subsequent amendments consistent with the agreement's subject matter and scope of work with risk management and county council concurrence. All right, we got that out of the way. So as background on this, and you may recall, usually it's Vicki Grenier who appears before your board. She came, I think, the last several years requesting similar agreements. Vicki's out on much-deserved vacation, so you got me today. But I'll share some background related to this, the Intergovernmental Transfer of Public Funds, or IGT. The IGT process is a funding strategy under the Social Security Act, whereby states or local governments can utilize state or local funds to increase federal matching dollars for Medicaid programs. And California currently receives a match for services provided through Medi-Cal, and currently the state claims federal funds for use in the Medi-Cal system at a rate which is less than the maximum allowable federal funding level. The difference between the maximum allowable federal funding level and the amount drawn down by the state is known as headroom, or unused federal reimbursement. This is available to be drawn down through an IGT by counties and other public entities covered by a Medi-Cal managed care plan. This mechanism for securing these funds involves an intergovernmental transfer, whereby the county transfers required matching funds to the Department of Healthcare Services or local health expenditures on behalf of the Medi-Cal population. DHCS then uses the matching funds to draw down additional federal funding from the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS. So once the DHCS receives the federal funds, it then transfers the federal and matching funds to the Medi-Cal managed care plans for that county. These plans then make payments to its IGT, IGT contracted Medi-Cal providers. The overall result to the county is that it receives back all transferred matching and federal funds, less a 20% DHCS administrative fee and a 2 to 3% managed care administrative fee, which is paid on the non-federal share only. So if your board votes once again to participate in this funding strategy, HHS will receive additional funding for its 2023 Medi-Cal services. These additional Medicaid funds must be used for the provision of health services to Medi-Cal enrollees and cannot be transferred to the county's general fund. There is no county general fund impact as a result of these requested actions. Also note, you'll see that California Health and Wellness and Anthem are the 2 plans. That's because this is the rate range for 2023. As a reminder, we've transitioned now to Partnership Health Plan as our managed care Medi-Cal plan starting on January 1st, 2024. And also that these plans, these agreements must be in place long enough to allow for the final accounting, so the terms are always several years out, even though the rate range period is for 2023. So thank you for your consideration of the requested actions related to the IGT. Participation in this funding opportunity will allow HHS to provide future Medi-Cal services at a higher level to Placer County residents. And as mentioned, Vicki, who usually does such a great job presenting, is away, but I'm here to answer any questions. And I believe Denise Medlin may also be here if I get stumped. So thanks so much, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Oldham. Bring it to the board. Questions, comments? Supervisor Gustafson.
Thanks, Dr. Rob. I really appreciate the presentation, and I just want to commend your staff. I can't hardly understand my EOBs or my insurance payments, let alone the transfer of all these funds and how we maximize that benefit for our constituents. So thank you. I mean, it takes a masterpiece of art and science to make this happen. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Justice. And I'll pass that along to Vicki and team. I know I took a few accounting classes in grad school, but this is, that definitely blows my mind every year.
Moving these grant funds around and meeting all those state and federal requirements. Thank you.
Very much. Any other comments by board members? Okay, I will open it up to the public. Anyone like to comment or have questions about this item? Anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
Okay, well, Dr. Rob, this has been a great presentation. Apparently you wowed everybody. But I agree, this is great. Future medical services being provided, that's wonderful. I know there's a lot of people out there of our constituents that need that help. So, bring it to the board.
I'll move approval of the 3 actions.
I'll second.
Motion by Gustafson, second by Holmes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Rob.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Okay, all right, we're going to move on to item number 6. Tahoe Truckee Area Regional Transit Systems Plan Update. Agreement with WSP USA, Inc. Good morning.
Good morning,
Hi.
Madam Chair and members of the board. Jamie Wright, managing your transit services here at Placer County. Today I will be doing just a quick overview of our contract and what the TART Systems Plan is and what it is hoping to accomplish. And so I will get started. So the TART Systems Plan, it's essentially a short-range transit plan for the TART system. The last one was completed in 2016. The systems plan or the short-range transit plan is generally done every 5 years. With COVID, we pushed it out a little bit so we could kind of understand our system a little more, as well as the implementation of our microtransit service, TART Connect, here in the basin. So we are a little further out. This go around. The TART Systems Plan update will evaluate not only our fixed route system, but will also evaluate the microtransit service TART Connect, the efficiencies and operation between the two of them. And the systems plan will be completed in partnership with Washoe County RTC, who we have an interlocal operating agreement with, and we operate services over in Incline Village for. The TART Systems Plan will look at our routing, including operating hours, seasonal service fluctuations. It will look at integrating efficiencies with the TART Fixed Route and TART Paratransit, as well as our TART Connect service. It will analyze annual and seasonal fixed route service deployment and feasibility in relation to staffing levels. Staffing levels continue to be a challenge for us here. So it'll really take a look at what service levels we're actually able to deploy with the staffing that we have. It will also take a look at bus driver compensation and retention, and a comparison and analysis in compared to other systems within mountain terrain areas. It'll look at our regional partnerships and funding mechanisms, as well as our regional connectivity, and that would be with the town of Truckee, as well as continued partnership with Washoe RTC. The timeline for the TART Systems Plan, so we will go through current system evaluation beginning in September, or as soon as you guys approve this and we can ink some signatures on the contract. That will go through about October of 2024. Simultaneously, somewhat, we will also start community outreach and obtaining feedback on the TART system and as well as TART Connect. Then we will form a technical advisory committee, or TAC, which will be done October through November. We will look at service scenarios and analyze recommendations December through April of 2025. And then the draft systems plan should be completed by May of 2025, and the final systems plan will come before your board for adoption in June or July 2025. So with that, I would like to request approval for authorization of the Director of Public Works or designee to award and execute an agreement with WSP USA Inc. of San Francisco, California to perform the Tahoe Truckee Area Regional Transit TART Systems Plan Update in the amount of $199,716, and authorize the Director of Public Works or designee to execute any amendments up to $19,972, consistent with the County Procurement Policy Manual and subject to risk management and County Council concurrence. Secondly, determine the proposed action is exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15306. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay, and bring it back to the board for comments. No comments?
No, I have one.
Supervisor Gustafson.
I was trying to let others go first. Jamie, thank you. You know, I know our vacancy's been running high on bus drivers. Where are we at currently?
We're less than 50% right now. We're at about 40%.
And we've been there for quite a while and
Yeah.
reduced services because of that.
Yep. Well, we are reducing what we can, but we're also mandating mandatory overtime, as well as split shifts, so kind of taxing our staff as well. And hopefully this plan will give us some ideas and how to maybe relieve that. Housing continues to be our biggest challenge. We have one bus driver who actually lives locally. Everybody else, including our supervisory and senior team, all live in Reno or Sparks or Carson.
And when we look at the TART, that's TART fixed route and TART paratransit, what about TART Connect? How are they doing in bus drivers?
They have similar challenges. It takes up to 100 drivers to deploy the TART Connect system on an annual basis. They have a lot of turnover. With them, it isn't as easily identifiable when they're short on a day because they're not necessarily dropping service, but your wait times extend.
Okay. Well, I'm just, as we go through this, I completely support doing this update and this study. When we look at the TART Connect services, will they be looking at consideration of other providers or bringing it in-house, or will it just be a comparison?
They will evaluate those things. We did just approve a 3-year contract with Downtowner LLC, and that has a 2 1-year term option. Bringing it in-house does create challenges, which is why we have not opted to purchase the assets or the fleet for that service to operate, because then it would require us to bring it in-house. So we're hoping over the next 3 to 5 years through the contract, we'll be able to further evaluate that and whether it is viable to bring it in-house.
Well, County Commissioner Hill from Washoe County had suggested that RTC might be interested in starting to provide some levels of service, additional services. So right now they're funding us, but over the next 3 years there might be other options. And so I just want to make sure we continue whatever we can do to provide the services we need.
Yeah, one of the biggest reasons they are highly interested in participating in the systems plan update is to evaluate the TART Connect service. In talking with their staff, I think there's also some challenges on their end in operating the service directly. And so I think together we'll be kind of analyzing that through this process.
Great. Well, I'm glad to know we're looking at it with our partners, and a great job. Thank you.
Okay, any other board members? Seeing none, open it up to the public. Anyone have questions or comments on this item? Anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. That's wonderful. I wish there was some magic wand to fix the problem of your lack of drivers.
You and me both.
Maybe planning for Christmas budgets, you can get people to come and drive for a couple of months. But who knows? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the board for action.
I'll move approval of the item.
I'll second.
Motion by Gore, second by Landon. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your presentation. Okay, we're going to move on to item 7, County Executive. Amend Placer County Code, Chapter 2 regarding compensation and reimbursement for grand jurors. And that is going to be online. Melissa?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, good morning, Chair Jones, members of the board, Mr. Chapney and Ms. Schwab. I'm Melissa O'Neill with your County Executive Office. This item before you today is proposing a change to County Code to simplify the method for compensating grand jurors and to increase the amounts available to them. I will read the action requested into the record. Introduce an ordinance, waive oral reading, amending Chapter 2, Article 2.112, Section 2.112060 of the Placer County Code to revise compensation amounts and criteria for the Placer County grand jurors. So in 1997, the Placer County Board of Supervisors approved an ordinance establishing the method and amounts available for the compensation of grand jurors. At that time, grand jurors were entitled to $25 per full panel meeting with a limit of 2 per month, and $10 for attendance at a committee meeting with a limit of 2 committee meetings per day. An ordinance passed by the board in 2018 removed the limit on the number of committee meetings per day for which a juror could seek reimbursement. However, the per meeting amounts to compensate jurors has not changed since 1997. Staff recently researched grand jury compensation in California and determined that despite these amounts not increasing in many years, Placer is still among the higher compensating counties in California for grand jurors. While grand jury service is a civic volunteer activity, the county recognizes that it requires a significant time commitment and that appropriate updates to the compensation for jurors will assist in attracting and retaining volunteers for service on the grand jury. Placer County is also one of the few counties in California in which the grand jury serves in both civil and criminal matters. In addition to updating the amount available to grand jurors, staff proposed to providing per day compensation to jurors rather than per meeting, which aligns with how the majority of California counties calculate juror compensation and simplifies the reimbursement process for both the county and the grand jurors. The proposed ordinance would revise county code to provide grand jurors compensation of $40 per day of meetings for up to 12 days per month, provide compensation for training at $40 per day for up to 2 days per year, and provide additional compensation to grand jurors fulfilling volunteer roles that require a significant additional time commitment, such as four-person pro tem, full panel secretary, or on-site office manager, as those terms are defined in the grand jury handbook. Based on average juror activity from the prior fiscal year, this action is expected to result in an estimated $250 in increased compensation per grand juror over the fiscal year. And this additional cost is available in the current year approved budget. And this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. Board members. Yes, Supervisor Landon.
Thank you, Melissa. No questions. I just wanted to say I so very much support this. I think our grand jurors put so much time and effort into the work that they do, and I'm glad to hear that we compensate them more, even though that amount even just seems like such a small amount. So I very much support this and appreciate all that they do.
Yeah, I would like to add on to that we've all probably served in volunteer positions on boards and commissions, and the grand jury is required to do a lot of homework, a lot of research, and so it's a serious, serious job, and I'm glad that we're finally going to step up and support them, especially since I think the price of gas has gone up since 1996. Most of them have to drive from all over up to the Auburn area, so I am also in full support of this. So I'd like to open it up to the public. Anyone like to make comments or ask questions? Seeing none, anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
Okay. All right, I'll bring it back to the board then.
I will move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Landon, second by Holmes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move back to item number 1. Agriculture, Parks, and Natural Resources, appropriation of transient occupancy tax funding, North Tahoe Regional Trail System, strategic and fiscal analysis. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's great to see you all here in Tahoe on a lovely day. I thought I would begin by reading some kind of technical and dry actions and then explain how those actions support a very exciting project. The actions before you in this item are, first, to approve an appropriation of transient occupancy tax funding in the amount of $200,000 from Cost Center's 10020 Tahoe Economic and Community Enhancement Fund for the North Tahoe Regional Trail System Strategic and Fiscal Analysis Project. Number 2, approve fiscal year 24-25 budget amendment AM 01037 to increase appropriations for Cost Center 10020 Tahoe Economic and Community Enhancement Fund in the amount of $160,000 with a corresponding cancellation of Tahoe Economic and Community Enhancement Fund reserves. Third, approve a fiscal year 24-25 budget amendment AM 01034 to increase appropriations for Cost Center 12085 Parks and Grounds Capital Improvements, Project PJ 02613, North Tahoe Trail Study in the amount of $200,000 with offsetting revenue. Fourth, authorize the Director of Agriculture, Parks, and Natural Resources to negotiate and execute a professional services agreement with Design Workshop Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $200,000 for professional service support of the North Tahoe Regional Trail System Strategic and Fiscal Analysis, subject to County Council and Risk Management concurrence. And finally, number 5, determine the proposed actions are not projects pursuant to CEQA Guidelines, Section 15378. So I am here to describe this project before you today with Stephanie Holloway, with your County Executive's Office, who has worked diligently with me on this project and this funding package. So I'll draw your attention up to the screen to begin with. This is the regional trail map that you adopted with our Park and Trail Master Plan in 2022. And you'll see the 2 black lines around Lake Tahoe. These are the 2 major regional paved trails that are in progress and being planned in the Tahoe area. And so the one that goes around all of Lake Tahoe, we call the Tahoe Bikeway. And the one that goes around the North Tahoe area, kind of the northwest Tahoe, almost looks like an ear, around Olympic Valley, Truckee, Martis Valley, and back to Tahoe, we call the Resort Triangle. So all of that together, 66 miles of trail within Placer County, not counting the part within Nevada and El Dorado County, is 66 miles of trail. And kind of makes a figure 8. It's a tremendous feature. It's a well-used feature. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is a panel that we took to the Tahoe Summit last week to explain this project. You'll see many of the green trails are dirt trails that are also being planned and also connecting up and also becoming a major draw to the region. The green trails are not the subject for today, though. It's the colored trails in black and blue and red that we want to talk about. This is the vision for this paved trail system. This Class 1 trail system began as far back as the 1970s. The Tahoe City Public Utility District took the initial vision and initiative to begin this system, and those blue trails that you see from Tahoe City going north up to Dollar Point, down along the entire West Shore and into El Dorado County, and then out along the Truckee River, all were taken on and managed and built by the Tahoe City Public Utility District. And in no small part, the fingerprints of our very own Supervisor Gustafson played a huge role in that. I know she kind of shies away from recognition of that sometimes, but you really can't even talk about this project without her role and the millions in grant funding and project management and advocacy that she has done in making this a reality. This is a huge project, and I don't even think we would start a project like this today if there had not been so much of it already done, and we're so far down the road and we're seeing how well it's being used. We also see on the north part of the map, you'll see right above Kings Beach, the North Tahoe Public Utility District has also stepped up, and they have constructed in the purple up there, the Pam Emmerich Trail, so they're making portions of this trail. North Star Community Service District has been very instrumental in the project management, partnering with Placer County to get the trail built from the Nevada County line up to North Star Drive in phases that was completed a couple years ago. I will mention that the dotted lines on here are planned routes. The solid lines are the portions of the trail that are already constructed. We also manage, Placer County does manage the 3 miles of trail through Olympic Valley from the mouth of the valley up into the village. The village project would extend that through their project when they come forward. A few years ago, our Public Works Department took the lead on the 2 miles of trail from Dollar Point going north, and there are sections of this trail planned. The next priority sections of trail would be from North Tahoe Regional Park near Tahoe Vista, connecting back down to Dollar Point. So that would make that entire connection from Kings Beach down to Tahoe City all the way down into El Dorado County. So this is becoming a reality. We're seeing some of the use of this trail. Even that Dollar Point section that we built a couple years ago, it only goes up into the Fulton Crescent neighborhood. It doesn't connect to a regional park or anything like that yet, but we're seeing peak use in the summer of over 1,000 users per day, just on that section. That's only a fraction of what we see on the Truckee River Trail, on some of the more popular sections. So use is huge. We're averaging, just on that section of ours, TRPA helped us take some counts up there, we're averaging 400 users a day. That's even in the, factoring the shoulder seasons. So huge amount of use. The trail is loved, it's used a great deal. Tahoe City PUD has done quite a bit of survey work. It's online. One of the interesting statistics, 50% of the users on their West Shore Trail say if the trail wasn't there, they'd be in their car. So it is truly not just a recreational trail. It's alternative transportation. It's checking a lot of boxes for the goals that we have in the Tahoe area, in addition to recreation. And also a very loved trail. Over half of the visitors say that this trail is integral to their enjoyment of the Tahoe region, not just the lake, but this trail is becoming integral to the entire enjoyment of the region. We have experience with what the trail costs to build, and it varies wildly from anywhere from $2 million a mile to over $20 million a mile, largely dependent on environmental considerations and what level of structures and infrastructure you have to build with that. And we know what routine maintenance costs. It costs between $5,000 and $7,000 a year just for regular trash pickup, sweeping, those kind of things, just the routine maintenance. But the larger cost is what needs to be set aside for when the trails need to be rebuilt, when paving has to be rehabilitated. And that needs a set aside of about $15,000 per year per mile. And then snow removal becoming much more popular and much more demand, costs roughly $7,000 a year per mile for snow removal. So these are expensive. They're loved amenities, but it's almost like a miniature road system that we're maintaining. So you put all that together to finish the system of the 66 miles that are there. There's 28 miles that are already built. There's about 37 miles left to be built. That price tag brings us somewhere in the scale of $150 million. And then another roughly $1.5 million a year thereafter to properly maintain it. So the reason that we're embarking on this study is that as much as has happened already, as much as is there, as much as it's loved, we really need some direction, momentum, confidence for decision makers. How do you take this elephant and break it into the right size bites so that it can be done logically over time and decision makers have confidence that they're applying money in the right place? That's what we're getting to in this study that we're asking for today. So the goals of this study, we would flesh out major barriers. We'd look at the remaining alignments. What are the infrastructure, structural, environmental barriers that we need to know about so that we can have confidence in our costing of things going forward? What about right-of-way acquisition? We go through state property, federal property, private property. We want to know more about what's out there in those kind of things, environmental concerns. What are the support amenities that are going to be needed? What kind of parking infrastructure is needed? Emergency access? What kind of furniture and signage and amenities? What needs? It's not just the trail; it's the support amenities that go with it. We need to know that. As I mentioned, we want to give you and the other decision makers confidence in the costs to prioritize funding. We want to study the benefits and understand those benefits better and how they can leverage resources. So in addition to the recreation, what does this do for alternative transportation, for congestion mitigation, for air quality, for getting cars off of the road, for connecting employment centers to workforce housing? You're hearing so much more about the needs of housing. Can we actually connect employment centers to housing without having to drive? And the answer to that more and more is yes, as this trail connects up. We need to engage the stakeholders. This involves a tremendous number of stakeholders. The public utility districts, the county have all partnered on this. It goes through multiple jurisdictions. So we need to bring all of the stakeholders together. We connect with El Dorado County, we connect with Washoe County, they become stakeholders, the state of Nevada. The town of Truckee has been very proactive in their part of this trail as well. We need to interact with them. The Tahoe Regional Planning Agency has done a lot of work already in branding and popularizing and formalizing the Tahoe Bikeway in their regional plans over the years. So has SACOG for the portions outside of the basin. But as you can see, it takes a lot of partners, and we all want to be marching in the same direction and in coordination with one another. This study that we're bringing forward would come up with a funding strategy. How do you take $150 million proposition out there, and how do you break it into logical pieces so that it can be done, so that you can make meaningful progress, so that you can make connections before you're able to do the entire thing? How do we leverage federal money, alternative transportation money? There probably is not, the recreational bonds don't come up with money in the scale of $100 million. So it may take federal kind of transportation, alternative transportation money to come to the table to be able to finish this. And then where do we find the local money to support it in operations and maintenance? Always the hardest part of a project like this is how do you find the local money to maintain it? And we want to know that it can be done before we go further. What about the management strategy with multiple agencies, with multiple rules? The state has different rules than the feds, than the locals. We want to make sure that it's managed consistently. Does it make sense to have multiple management agencies, or does somebody specialize in it? Those are the kind of questions that we can ask through this study. There is a lot that we already know. The study is not starting from scratch by any means, and Stephanie will have an item following up that will propose to fund some of these trail sections and rehabilitation projects that we know are already needed. So it's not like we know nothing. We do know what the shovel-ready projects are now. The North Tahoe Trail has already had a lot of work go into it. Environmental review has gone into it. Design has gone into it. So we know some of these projects. The next section of the Martis Valley Trail, likewise. Virtually shovel ready, so we're not just starting from scratch, but it will add to that knowledge base that we have. We did send out a solicitation for consultants, and we didn't have any responses, so that gave us some flexibility. We reached out after that to Design Workshop, who has a lot of specialized knowledge. They worked with us in our Park and Trail Master Plan. They were our major consultant. And they also worked with the PUDs, North Tahoe and Tahoe City, on their active recreation plan, so they have a lot of local knowledge about what we're doing up here in the Tahoe area. Stephanie Grigsby with Design Workshop is online. We're still working out some of the final refinements on the scope of work and the sub-consultant scopes. So Design Workshop is proposing to work with the Sierra Business Council and EPS Economics to bring this study together. So that's the purpose, is to give this project momentum, to get the stakeholders together. I'll note that at the Tahoe Summit last week, Secretary Buttigieg announced a $24 million grant for a portion of this trail on the East Shore. So momentum is building. I want to tie into that. So with that, before I turn it over to the board, I do want to thank the NTCA board. The North Tahoe Community Association Board, who has been very supportive. On October 7th, they heard this presentation and recommended unanimously the appropriation of these funds to complete this study. And those funds consist of $40,000 in the TOT fund that Stephanie manages already, as well as $160,000 in the reserves of that fund that are what we call turnback TOT, or funding that was intended for the the administrative work of the NTCA board that wasn't used, and so they approved the use of that for this study. So with that, Stephanie, I don't know, I've talked plenty long. You may not want to add to that. So Stephanie's saying no. I'll turn it back to the chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Comments, questions by the board members? Supervisor Gore?
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate the presentation, and I think it's really important for us to take a look at how we actually get to fruition and put all these plans together. What do you anticipate the timeline being on the work being done after the contract is awarded?
The duration of the project. I wondered if I thought of that coming up, and I forgot to bring it. Stephanie, if Stephanie Grigsby is online, I want to say about a 9-month process. If Stephanie is there, she may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but
And then as she's coming over, another question, I'm sure you're going to include community outreach and work with all the different stakeholders, of which there are many in our community, to get their input.
Absolutely. It's a very long list, our scope of work. It's a very long list of stakeholders,
Great. And it looks like there she is.
I am. Hi, and thank you, board, for allowing me to join virtually today. And thanks to Andy for such a wonderful description of the importance of this trail, along with the scope of work that we're anticipating. You are correct, Andy. We're looking at generally an 8 to 9 month process upon notice to proceed. So we have both EPS, economic planning systems, for the financial study, Sierra Business Council to help understand how we might be able to think about advocacy and positioning of the trail to unlock some of those larger funding pockets, and then also NCE, grading, engineering, to look a little bit more deeply at the trail profile itself. As Andy said, we have a lot of great information on how to construct these trails and how to maintain them, but looking at the cost-benefit opportunities for design strategies and the design detail for that trail system to reduce maintenance costs in the long run, potentially by looking at the design detail in general as well.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Supervisor Gustafson.
Thank you, Andy, and Stephanie, and Stephanie, the other Stephanie. Thanks for your comments earlier, but as you well know, Bill Briner, who we lost this year, is really the legacy of starting these bike trails. I was privileged to carry that legacy forward, but Bill Briner started this in the 70s, and as a former county supervisor, and then as general manager of the PUD, and then at the state, and continuing to support the funding that made the original trails work. And so I wanted to shout that out first, because his legacy needs to be remembered. Secretary Buttigieg made a comment that I just wanted to reiterate as well, and that is trails are not ornamental, they are fundamental. And I think they certainly are in this community for both transportation and recreation. So much of our traffic in this region are people going to recreate. And rather than having to drive to start their recreation trip, to be able to ride or walk or stroll to recreate, gets those cars off the road. So it's a combination of those factors that have made trails so incredibly successful up here. I really commend you for bringing this forward. We really need this moving forward, so we have a vision of how we accomplish this undertaking. We have those big sections on the map that need to get filled in, and it's going to take a lot of resources, so thank you.
Other comments by board members? This is a wonderful trail system. I just have to add that those of us who are supervisors for other districts are a bit jealous because our folks in our districts would love to have trails, and it's just a very slow and expensive process. And so kudos to you, Andy. You're doing a great job with with
Thank
our
you.
master
And
trails.
Your district is certainly not out of sight and out of mind. We are also working on that one.
My constituents will never let you keep them out of sight or out of mind.
And actually, if I could, what Bill Briner was so good at was at that time, so many of those initial trails on the West Shore and through the North Shore Trail in Tahoe City were Caltrans funded and came with ongoing maintenance dollars
Wow.
in perpetuity. So those are incredibly important trails, and we hope Caltrans will consider that in the future, which certainly help us.
Great resource, yes, exactly.
Speaking of stakeholders.
Yeah.
Caltrans.
Okay, I'm going to open up to the public. Anyone like to make comments or have questions on this item?
Hello, yes, my name is Patricia, and I'm a homeowner here in Kings Beach. Just a few comments that might turn into a question. All of us in the community are really excited about the connecting of these trails, and they are fundamental, not just to recreate, but if you do want to drive towards transportation, I want to recognize a gap that I see within a lot of the initiatives that are overlapping here, which is if we're going to have trails and encourage people to have more bikes, where do we actually safely park these bikes? There is no public bike parking beyond 3 little rings at most places in this, here at the beach, at the parks, and so forth. With e-bikes being now approved in the Tahoe Basin, we're going to see an increase in recreation in this area, an increase in theft and other elements because we're wrapping around trees and so forth. Come to Kings Beach on a Friday night, you will see hundreds of bikes all over the place. But I here will never drive my bike downtown and park it because there's no place to do that. I don't take my bike to the pickleball courts because there's no safe way to cross 267, or there's only 3 rings and they're usually taken by the time I get there. There's no place to put our bikes. So we actually, locally here, will drive our bike to the parking with all the other people, ride it, come back, go home, get the bike, then go have drinks with everyone afterwards. We don't take our bike there because there's no place to go. So first that. And other thing I want to share why this is so fundamental. I know you joke of saying how jealous you are, but I would love to have sidewalks where it's safe to walk in our neighborhoods. You don't have the challenges we have of safely walking, biking, or anything in our neighborhoods compared to a traditional community. So please keep that in mind, that it is no joke, that this is our safety. Because we do not have sidewalks or to connect our neighborhoods anywhere throughout this part of this region, if you saw the dotted lines. So I just want to point that out. So I really encourage you to look at bike parking as part of trail systems, as part of the parking management, and as part of any project that is being put forth to require that in addition to actually car parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else? Good morning.
Hello, Chair and Board. John Freitas, a Placer County resident. Just some things to think about. I think the angle with the Department of Transportation is huge. Pulling the cars off the road around the lake onto bikes. Other things to consider would be, with the advent of the e-bike, it's going to cost money, but having these stations where pedestrians can walk up, swipe the phone, the card, jump on an e-bike, go miles, park the bike in another charging station. So they don't have to worry about hauling a bike around. They're publicly funded, or not publicly funded, but. And then the other idea of consideration would be other communities, and I don't know, maybe they have them here as well, but trail ambassadors, right? Individuals in vests that are on bikes or on foot, and they spend the time on the trails taking care of residents who may have dehydration issues. With so many bikes, there's accidents, people get scratches, flat tires, chains derail, and these ambassadors come to the rescue, and they know and trained in CPR and when to call 911, when to bring out an ice pack. So that all costs money, but it will be an attraction to residents to know that. And then you have the safety factor, right? If the residents know that there's ambassadors on the trails, they're going to feel more comfortable. And then also knowing that there's bikes available or scooters. You know, downtown cities have these scooter stations, and you just, anyway, that's enough.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Sean Barclay, General Manager of the Tahoe City Public Utility District. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to say thank you for your support, hopefully your support of this project today. Andy did a great job of presenting the item today. And as Supervisor Gustafson mentioned, you know, the Tahoe City PUD has a long history, starting with Mr. Briner's contributions and then, you know, Cindy's contributions as well, to building out that trail system. And so in large part, our focus today is rebuilding those trails because they've now reached 50 years old. So not only are we looking through this plan at the, you know, the solutions to filling in those gaps, but to renewing this asset that for the community. And so, you know, the Tahoe City PUD is happy to be a partner. I want to thank staff, Andy, Stephanie have been great all along this process in engaging with us and being collaborative with us and designing what the RFP and what the contract would look like with design workshop. So we're really excited to be a part of it. I think it's going to be a critical project for the community in trying to broaden the pot of available funding. And the biggest, I think, nut we have to crack is that we need more money. We know how to do it. As Andy said, we know where these trails are. We know how to do them. We need the money to do it. And we don't have enough money in TOT or local property tax revenue to fund the $150 million bill. So one of the things that I'm most excited about is the opportunity that comes out of this plan to be able to hopefully attract either state or federal funding to help us finish this critical asset for the community. So just with that, I want to thank you for your support and thank your staff.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else? Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Supervisors. Tony Karwowski, North Tahoe Community Alliance CEO. I just wanted to say thank you to staff at the county for putting this proposal together and emphasize that as our board looked over this and made recommendation of TOT expenditure for this project, as proposed, that it was a unanimous vote on the issue in support of generating this trail study. And also wanted to recognize, number one, thank you, Sean, for stating a lot of the issues around broadening the funding pot and making more funds available for this really large project that we have ahead of us. I think it's important to acknowledge that we've got kind of three things going on here. One is investment in original trail development to complete the Resort Triangle Trail. Two is R&M. There's a large cost to operating and maintaining these trail networks. And then number three, of course, as Sean's expressed, you know, they have a life cycle as well, and we're ultimately going to have to capital replace them. So there's a lot of planning that needs to go on the front of this, and I appreciate staff's approach in bringing forward the opportunity for us to have a reference document to refer to as we go through these processes, and particularly with our funding of TOT as it pertains to the recommendation that our board makes to this board for projects and programs around the trails and investment in the trails, in that traditionally, I want to be careful there, traditionally, as the trail projects have come to either the previous CAP committee or the CIT committee, it's been really like a first come, first serve kind of opportunity for trail development. So there's never been really an opportunity to come together as a community and prioritize what the needs are in the network, whether it is either original trail redevelopment or capital replacement. So this document will give us, again, a talking point to come to together at a committee level as our projects come to us to review those projects and give frame of reference for investment in terms of the priorities that the community has set forth. So thank you. We appreciate the efforts here and look forward to the results.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the audience? Do we have anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
Okay, bring it back to the board for other comments.
Madam
Super-
Chair, did someone else up?
Somebody else wants to.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Supervisor Gustafson for her longtime leadership on this issue, but more importantly, I want to thank Andy Fisher for his leadership over these many years, and not only here in the Tahoe region, but also throughout the whole county. And you gave a very detailed, comprehensive report this morning, and it meant a lot to me, and I really appreciate your service. So thank you for that.
Supervisor Gustafson?
I'll ditto that and move approval.
Okay, and I would like to add on to that is to thank you again for all your work on all of the districts. I know we spread you pretty thin, but I would like to clarify the jealousy of other districts like mine is as I have a huge rural district, and we lack sidewalks in many of my areas, and my community wants trails for connectivity, safe schools, and also for going to dinner, going to lunch, going for coffee, that kind of things. It's just that there's not enough money to go around for everybody. You guys are very lucky you have the use of TOT taxes. None of the other districts have that advantage. But at any rate, thank you, Andy, really, for everything. And motion by Gustafson and a second by Holmes. Roll call, please.
Landon?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Gustafson? Yes. Gore?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Andy. Okay, are you up next by chance? Our second, item number 2, County Executive approval of additional transient occupancy tax funds for 2 trail projects as recommended by North Tahoe Community Alliance via the TOT TBID Dollars at Work program. Lindsay.
That's
Good
me.
morning.
Good morning, Chair Jones and Supervisors. I'm Lindsay Romek with the County Executive Office and excited to present the second Trails project this morning. Appreciate Andy's presentation, also his and Supervisor Gustafson's highlighting of 2 weeks ago at the Lake Tahoe Summit, the tremendous discussion on the importance of trails, including from Secretary Buttigieg. So perfect timing for us to continue to talk about trails. So I'm here before you today, as you stated, Chair Jones, to ask for approval of additional transient occupancy funding for 2 trail projects. But first, going to go back a little bit. If you remember last December, your board approved initial year 1 funding for 3 trail projects that were vetted and recommended through the TOT TBID Dollars at Work program led by the North Tahoe Community Alliance. And I'll walk through those trails really quickly just to remind you, you've heard about all of them, I think, from Andy's presentation, but they were, as we call them, TR1, the North Tahoe Trail, which is a Placer County Department of Public Works-led project. It is a 2.5-mile trail that will head west out of the North Tahoe Regional Park as a key component of the Resort Triangle Trail. Then we had TR2, which was the Tahoe City Public Utility District's trail reconstruction project. As you've just heard, many of their trails were created decades ago, so they are in desperate need, some of the sections of reconstruction. And then the third project we call TR3, which is the North Tahoe Public Utility District's Pam Emmerich Memorial Pine Drop Trail, which is a trail within the North Tahoe Regional Park that is a key connection point into our Resort Triangle Trail as well. So back last December, you approved the initial funding for the trail projects as we had anticipated that the trail study you just approved might be underway sooner than starting this fall. However, as you heard, the process took a little longer than intended. And so therefore, rather than waiting for that process to be complete before approving additional funding for these trail projects, we're back before you to ask for your approval for the additional funding. I will highlight that you're only being asked for 2 of those 3 trails today. We are still working with Tahoe City PUD on crossing our T's and dotting our I's on the contract amendment, so we anticipate that we will be back very soon. And one final thing before I read through the action requested of you today is I did just want to highlight, as we're talking funding, both Tahoe City PUD and North Tahoe PUD are putting in match funding from their districts, so we thank them for that. It's not all TOT funded. And then for the Placer County Department of Public Works led project, did want to highlight that they have done an incredible job of seeking other funding, and they've brought in more than $4 million in non-TOT funding through state and federal grants. So again, really appreciate our partners and our staff doing all they can to help fund these trail projects. So with that, I will read through the requested action for you today. Action 1, approve an amended agreement with the North Tahoe Public Utility District for an additional $500,000 in transient occupancy tax funding for TR3, NTPUD, Pam Emmerich Memorial Pine Drop Trail Reconstruction and Extension Project, Planning and Design, and authorize the county executive officer or designee to execute an amended use of funds agreement upon county council and risk management approval. The total new contract amount will be $600,000. Action 2, approve $1 million in additional TOT funding and an interdepartmental memo with the County of Department of Public Works for TR1 North Tahoe Trail Segment 1 upon County Council and Risk Management approval for a total of $1.2 million for this project. And Action 3, determine that the requested actions are all not projects under California Environmental Quality Act Guidelines 15378. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Sorry about that. Turn myself off. Board members, comments, questions? No, I'm going to open it up to the public then. Anyone have comments or questions?
Thank you. Good morning again. For the record, Sean Barclay, General Manager of the Tahoe City PUD. As Lindsay noted, our project is not here today for your approval, but I wanted to thank staff for working with us. And our hope is to bring it to you soon. Just to give you some perspective, our project submittal for the multi-year sponsorship in 2023 is all 3 phases were construction. And as we have started using the funding that you contributed on our year 1 trail for the North Shore Trail, that project is in construction now. And as you can imagine, costs have increased, and we've also taken the opportunity to improve some of our design on the next phases based on experiences we're having with the North Shore Trail construction. So we wanted to be open and transparent with our funding partners, with the county, so we're walking them through sort of what has changed with our year 2 and 3 projects, and we hope to bring those back to you guys soon for approval and your support. But I just want to thank you again for your continued support for these trail projects on behalf of the community. It's really important. We really appreciate what you guys are doing. And I also just real quickly wanted to say thank you again for being in Tahoe. I know there's not a ton of people here today, but on behalf of the community, we really appreciate that you come make the effort to be here and be in Tahoe. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Tony Kowalski, North Tahoe Community Alliance. Just want to say thank you to staff and the supervisors as well for supporting this investment in our trail network. I would like to just point out that yes, it's so important as we make these investments that they don't just come from TOT, that there are match funds that come into the program as we decide to make these investments. As these programs came through our both committees and also our board, we did make sure in our processes we have minimum thresholds as projects and programs come through the TOT Bid Dollars at Work program for match. So all projects and programs that come through have to have a minimum amount of match in order to qualify. So we made sure all of these projects did, and they all had actually more match. So we want to thank the applicants for that and those efforts and making sure that our TOT dollar investments are going as far as possible. So, and one last note here is as these projects came through, without a reference document that we were talking about on the last issue, our committees and our board felt very strong that these 3 projects were the next steps in the correct steps, given the amount of funding that we have to contribute from a TOT perspective to the trail network, these were the appropriate projects to move forward with from the community. So we appreciate your support in there, and again, a big shout out to staff and the implementers for bringing these projects to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the audience? Anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the board then.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Gustafson, second by Gore. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, we're a little bit early. We're, 12 minutes early, so for our 10:30 item, we're going to take a 12-minute break. Actually, now we're 11 minutes. Welcome back. We're ready to move on to our next item. Item number 3, County Executive Short-Term Vacation Rental Ordinance / STR Advisory Group Update. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Stephanie Holloway, your Deputy CEO. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. It wouldn't be a Tahoe board meeting if we didn't have a discussion around short-term rentals.
Yes.
So happy to be here today to bring forward what is not an action item, but more of an update and to seek some feedback from your board regarding 2 specific items, and to give you kind of an update of where we're headed with this newly formed short-term rental advisory group. And so just to give you a little bit of background, in June, when your board was here on the 25th, you did consider some amendments to the short-term rental ordinance, which you did approve on July 23rd of this year, and implementation went into effect last week on the 22nd. So just to bring that back before your attention, a number of cleanup and ordinance implementation items were considered and approved, and so we think continual refinement of this ordinance as directed by your board to continue to be adaptive and to listen to our community and continue to refine. So there were 2 items, though, if you recall. I have a frog now, too.
Sorry, we're passing it around.
There were 2 items that your board did deliberate on back in June and asked that we continue conversations around. And the first one was the number of units allowed in the ordinance per property. The ordinance currently allows 1 unit per property. So further conversation, and you did receive some public testimony around that piece of the ordinance. And the other was the minimum number of nights that a permit is required to be, or a property is required to be rented under a permit status. So those 2 items we did bring to the advisory group in an ad hoc sort of setting. We did poll the members of the advisory group who are interested in these specific topics. We did have 9 members of that group attend a meeting that we held on July 25th. And I will say, just recognize and thank them. I know this is a busy time of year for them. And so to have them sort of call to action on feedback for your board in July was really admirable, and we really thank them for that. So we did reach consensus and have some recommendations to bring forward to you today. And I think I have some slides here to advance. Okay, I went over that. So just to start, the maximum units per property, I'm just going to call out the code section. This is Chapter 9, Section 9.42.090 A3. So this is under the prohibitions and restrictions. So the current ordinance, like I said, does restrict the number of units per property to 1, with the exception of town centers, which your board did amend in the last round of amendments to allow 4. So the comments that your board provided us back in June really highlighted and refreshed the intention of your board back in 2022 when we amended and restated the ordinance, not to essentially put added restrictions, but to recognize the number of operators, the number of units that were currently in operation. And so this limitation down to 1 was included at the time, but based on your feedback in June, we did take that back to the advisory group for consideration of units that have historically been rented with more, or properties that have been historically rented with more than 1 unit per property. So the ad hoc members did suggest a implementation of extending that provision. If you recall, there was an amnesty period that has since passed for coming into compliance, and so the ad hoc members did recommend that your board consider moving essentially that timeline or extending that amnesty period to coincide with a time where the permit or the property would essentially sell, and so the permit would no longer be in existence, or that the permit would be non-renewed by a current property owner. So essentially changing the trigger that the 1 unit per property would go into effect. I will say we did a lot of research around other jurisdictions that have this provision. We did consistently find this provision in a number of the STR ordinances throughout the state. The biggest difference was when the implementation occurred. And so the suggestion by the ad hoc group was really consistent with what we're finding throughout the state of really that turnover of the property or a non-renewal status. So the other item was actually a pretty short conversation. The minimum number of nights rented, I'm going to bring the code section to your attention, code section 9.42.080P. So this is under the operational standards of the ordinance. The minimum number of nights that is currently in the ordinance required for properties to be rented is 30 nights. And that was brought in when we did amend the ordinance back in 2022. So if you recall, at that time, we did establish the cap. And so just historically, the thinking behind the minimum number of nights was really an assumption that we would at some point reach a cap, and that we would want those permits to be active, and so that people that would essentially not have gotten a permit above the cap wouldn't be sort of waiting in line for properties that weren't active. And so that was really the intention behind this provision. And so I think and I'll just kind of refresh your memory. Our current permit status is roughly 3,400. That falls below our cap of 3,900. So we are currently below the ultimate cap. And so the ad hoc members of the board really felt like this was a good provision, but not until such time that we have reached exhaustion of that cap and the original intention. And so that was really the recommendation that the ad hoc group wanted to bring back to your board. I do want to talk a little bit about next steps. So as I mentioned, we are continuing to adaptively manage this program. Our STR advisory group, if you recall, was really set in place to meet on a quarterly basis. The focus of that group, is around sort of this discussion around the cap and whether there is an appetite or whether there is a need to reduce that cap or to change the cap into the future. And so really some bigger policy level discussion. We are also in conversation with the advisory group around just geospatial, where STRs are located in our community and how that potentially serves some of the other priorities that we have that we're trying to balance within our community between hotel development and housing. As you're well aware, there's a number of different sort of competing or parallel priorities that we have on the use of these homes. So we are anticipating that advisory group coming back, and I apologize for the XX on this slide. We are anticipating that advisory group will be convening on the 18th of September. So just in a couple of weeks at the Tahoe City PUD from 2 to 4. So if any interested members or community members want to join us for that conversation. I do want to shout out one agenda item for that meeting that I'm really excited to bring forward to the group and hopefully potentially to highlight with your board. The North Tahoe Community Alliance has entered into a pilot project around best practices. So they're working with operators, STR property managers and operators within our region to really build education around the responsibility of not only the homeowners but the occupants of those STRs on some of the sensitive issues that we have between water usage, fire, red flag warnings, and a number of different education components that we'd like to really build into the program as well. So just a shout out to Adam Wilson and the NTCA group who've been tracking on that. I'm excited to bring that forward to this STR group, but then hopefully sometime for your board. The other thing I just wanted to mention, we are tracking with your feedback the need to amend the ordinance around these two specific issues. We are, like I said, in conversations around the cap. And also want to bring back an update for your board on the defensible space inspections. All of that we're tracking for the November board meeting. And like I said, it wouldn't be a Tahoe board meeting without an STR item. So we are tracking that amendment to the ordinance, working with County Counsel's office on that language, and anticipate that coming back in November. And then one last thing, we have another scheduled advisory group meeting in November, December. We are starting to talk about, the standards that are in the ordinance that, apply to STR properties. There's been some conversation in the community about whether they should be applied more broadly, whether they are standards for our community that are good best practices. So again, conversation with that advisory group. We anticipate that conversation before the end of the year. So. With that, I'm happy to take your feedback on these two specific items. That was it. Or any suggestions.
Thank you for that, Stephanie. Supervisor Gustafson.
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks to a couple members of the committee that are here. So thank you for your service on that and for the best practices. On the number of units per property, the issue that I ran into when I went out to look at some of those that had called me to look at those is that many of those were very old, much older properties that actually predate some of our zoning types of rules and regulations in this area. So one was an old fishing lodge, one were a number of cabins that were there. And these might be perfect examples for the launch pad program, because they really need financial help to make them habitable. Most don't have kitchens, but they're little sleeping cabins that people have been renting or using for decades. So it might be great as part of this in allowing those to continue on, but to also encourage them to look at the Launchpad program as we roll that out and consider that for conversion to and give those people an opportunity, because they'll lose the value in their property if it's going to go back to they can only have one of the units rented. But if we can incentivize that to be updated, at least the two I looked at were small cabins that weren't fully equipped and wouldn't meet current standards for our short-term rental ordinance. So how do we get them into lodging?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a great suggestion. I do know that there are some properties that have more than 4 units per property, and so that is another issue that there are some regulations, at least in the basin, that may limit the number to 4, but options are available, I think, to your point about other avenues to support continued occupancy.
Yeah, we have a lot of really old zoning and old things that don't comply with current zoning or current community plans, area plans, TRPA rules that we find everywhere because we evolved over many decades of not watching all of this. The other thing I loved, thank you for bringing up the red flag warnings. We'd received a couple emails and suggestions that not only to educate the public, but then to send out messaging when there was a red flag warning so that any users were aware of what that meant if they're not familiar with red flags and the dangers. And then as the STR group meets, especially as it relates to the cap and geospatial and other ways to limit that, really looking at what El Dorado County and City of South Lake Tahoe have found. We had a bit of conversation yesterday as to whether those are converting into long-term rentals. And as we heard yesterday, $1.3 million for a median house. Most of those are not going to convert to long-term rentals without incentives. And that's what we're seeing. People are paying too much they want to use their home, and the rents don't make up for those sales prices for a long-term rent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's all part of growing sort of this refinement of the balance, right?
Right.
Are there some incentives move those STRs into locations that support some of our, town center goals. And so
Right.
that's what the advisory group is really tasked to have conversation around.
And then my final question or comment is, I'd really think I missed the mark on the Tahoe Basin area plans. We wrote a policy, I supported that being inserted into the area plans, that as new hotels came online, we would reduce numbers of STRs. That's a policy that's in the area plan. It's under litigation, but it's certainly a policy. But it doesn't include the areas outside of the basin. And so therefore it excludes Alpine Meadows, Olympic Valley, North Star, and other areas. So I think I'd like to see the board establish this for the eastern area, this concept of as we incentivize new hotels or lodging units at the base of facilities, because that's the town center or the base of recreation facilities, that we are reducing a commensurate amount of STRs. And I'd like for us to at least consider that to be a broader, to encompass the whole region, because we're all interconnected. So traffic, evacuation, many of the issues that we hear, whether it's 39 North or Palisades or any of the other projects that are coming forward, that we're accounting for that in our STR program as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And for the record, I'm gonna call it the policy. So it's in the Tahoe Basin Area Plan, policy HS-P-12. It's on page 120. And you're absolutely right. It applies
only
to
in the
basin
basin
boundary.
Right.
The good news is that the majority of our STRs are currently within the basin, but you're absolutely right. There is maybe a purpose and intent to expand that to be regional.
Well, it certainly reduces traffic if people are located closer to the amenities that they want. And that was the whole concept of that. So
Great.
if there's going to be a reduction, tie it to those new hotel rooms. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Other questions? Comments? We've come a long way on STRs.
And we continue. We continue down this path.
Very good. I'm curious as to your impression of your ad hoc committee. I know everyone was eager to start that. How is that, the actual committee going?
Yeah, the ad hoc committee has been great. Like I said, just convening a meeting in the middle of July, and we knew we wouldn't get everybody, but I really was pleased with the consensus and the willingness of that group to really look at all sides. There's not just two sides. There's a lot of different complexities in this program within our community. And so, I think the building block of our mission statement has been really helpful to help people kind of get outside of maybe the focus that they came in with and really being open to understand different perspectives. And so, yeah, just the consensus that we got on these two issues to bring back before you I was very pleased with that, and so I hope that continues.
Well, that's great. The one thing that I learned in mediation training is that there are three sides to every story. There's your side, there's my side, and sometimes there's the truth in the middle.
And then there's the Tahoe side.
But I'm glad that you were responsive to all those constituents that came to that last board meeting, that wanted to be heard and be a part of it. I really commend you for that. I think it was a great opportunity and a great thing to do. So I want to open this up to the public. We have commenters, questions, comments on this topic.
Hello, board. This is John again from Roseville. Every day you learn something, right? Every hour, sometimes every couple minutes, you learn something. I hear and come to know this STR, short-term rental. So I hear words about, maximum number of nights. I don't know enough about this topic, but is there provisions or exceptions in response to natural disasters? So if there was ever a forest fire, flooding, weight of ice and snow, residents displaced from their homes looking for long-term residence or rentals, insurance would step up and pay for it, but if they have homeowners insurance. But where I'm going with this is yes, it may be a property defined as STR, but maybe under a catastrophe declared by the state, we say, you know what? We can go beyond 30 days because we're responding to a catastrophe. So I don't know if that's part of this group, and that's my 2 cents.
Thank you for your comments. More comments? Please come forward. Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon again. Patricia, homeowner here in Kings Beach. I'm here to speak a little bit about the minimum number of nights rented element of the short-term rental. I'm here, a homeowner who had a short-term rental license that was renting, then thought I would try to give back to my community and stop short-term rental, and made a relationship with a local employer to house their employees for certain seasonal times, summer and winter. Those times, contracts are under about 4 months, which if you look at that, 4 and 4 equals 8 months out of the year that I can house seasonal workers. None of those actually align with the lease to local programs. And so therefore, for the remaining 4 months out of the year, if I want to I'm already taking a pay cut by renting to locals. And if I want to fill up a little bit of that gap in between, it's the off season of when I short-term rent. I actually ended up releasing my license due to all the excessive fees recently because I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. Because as a primary resident with the previous, there was a exception to be not allocated with the cap. That has changed because of legal reasons. I understand that. But my question is could the minimum numbers of nights rented be changed for primary residents that are also renting this? I'm trying to give back to my community. I don't think I could reach 30 nights in less than 4 months each year and continue to house that. Therefore, my choice is I'm trying to get a lease to locals into my home, but otherwise I might end up short-term renting again. And that's when I could actually make money. I'm spending so much time trying to give back to my community, it's actually making it more difficult than actually just making the money. So my encouragement is to look at this minimum numbers of nights rented and look at some of the other unique situations, particularly around primary residents, homeowners that hold these licenses versus the secondary homeowner licenses. If we can't give an exception to the cap, what other encouragements can we provide primary residents in that to have flexibility to do both? I want to lease to seasonal workers and I want to fill the gap individually if I can't find a long-term renter because they can't afford it, unfortunately. So thank you very much. I encourage you to look at minimum numbers of nights rented as not being part of the need for, it's specifically for primary residents. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Good afternoon, or good morning still. Sorry.
Morning, Chair Jones, Supervisors, Karen and Daniel, Wayne Nader. I want to commend the staff and also the board for the work that's been done to tighten up the ordinance, to bring more control. Obviously, the community was really crying for that because of some of the issues that have happened in the past, and I think that is getting resolved. So again, I want to thank everybody's involvement in making that happen. There are 3 areas that I'd still like to see considered. They've been brought up to you before. I think there's some merit to them. Some will be a little bit of a challenge, but the first one I want to bring up is the number of permits. As you know, there's 3,900 that are available. There are about 3,400 that are currently being used. That number, the 3,900, eclipses anything else around the lake that any of the other jurisdictions have. And so, their caps are much, much lower. And so it really puts a lot of pressure on the community here to have that kind of a number available. So I would really encourage you and the advisory group to consider capping it at its current level of 3,400. I think that's a reasonable approach. I think to think about putting 600 more, or excuse me, 500 more into the community would be even more of an issue. I think would raise more issues up. So I really think that that's something that's worthy of a conversation. The other two areas are kind of, unfortunately, are probably the proverbial horses are already out of the barn. But the one that I would like to see is the concentration of these into communities, that there should be some distance between them so that residents are not having a multiple of STRs around them. So there are other jurisdictions around here that have developed a program for that distance. So I think that's another worthy conversation. The other one, the last one that I want to bring up is the 1 year waiting period. I think investors have come in and have purchased a lot of these in the last number of years because of the opportunity to make money, and it's raised the actual value of homes, unfortunately. But I think that would help if we had a 1 year waiting period. It would at least knock out some of the investors coming in again and driving up values of the pricing of homes for the locals. So I would hope that those three could be conversations that both the advisory and the board could have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to comment, have questions? Good morning.
Good morning again. Tony Kowalski, CEO, North Tahoe Community Alliance. I just want to commend the board and staff for developing this program, this adaptive management program, which is completely appropriate for an STR program in our region, and thank you. It's an incredible tool to help manage our housing stock, number one, and we have to keep that in mind as we continue to adapt the program. And I'd just like to remind the board and staff and other people in the room, we're really facing a unique lodging crisis in our area, right? There's a housing crisis, and we have a lack of hotels in our jurisdiction. We haven't built a new hotel in our jurisdiction for 60 years, 60. Do you know how many we've taken down in that same time? We've just in the last 10 years lost over 470 rooms between right down the street in Crystal Bay and here in Kings Beach. And the pressure that is put on our STRs is obvious to us. This is a huge tension in our community, right? The downside of that is also the visitors who come to our area now have fewer places to actually stay. So as we continue to monitor the policy around the adaptive management portion of this program, we need to really think about what redevelopment in our downtown cores looks like and how we prioritize bringing hotels back to our downtown cores so we can attract our visitors back to our downtowns, and they will have walkability to retail, restaurant, the lake, public transit to the resorts and other points of interest throughout our jurisdiction, right? And that will free up and reduce pressure on STRs in our communities and potentially even move some of that housing stock back where it belongs, to residential. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else out there like to please come forward? Good morning.
Morning, Adam Wilson, also with the NTCA. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the adaptive management process that the board has encouraged staff and our advisory group to take. I think this is really a common sense way to approach any issue in the two in front of you, as well as any that might be ahead of you. So I want to thank the staff and the team for working really hard and your direction around that. With regard to these two topics, I would encourage some direction from the Board of Supervisors to extend the amnesty until the amended ordinance language is actually in place and before you. As Stephanie noted, that amnesty period has expired, which has taken away some rights from our existing STR permit holders that are still trying to operate their STRs within the guidelines that they were allowed to operate those. So I would encourage you to provide some direction to allow that to happen and extend that amnesty until the language is brought forward. And then secondly, I just want to thank again the staff and this advisory group, the ad hoc group. there are a lot of different positions, but everybody's coming with the goal of solving an issue with solutions, and not just it's not my problem. So thank you for that direction. Thank you to the advisory group and also to our best practices group. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else out there? Anyone online?
I see none, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the board. Have any other further comments or questions? Yes, Supervisor Gustafson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Jones. Couple thoughts. I want to make sure, and I believe the Short-Term Rental Advisory Committee is looking at other jurisdictions for what's working and where they've had challenges enforcing some of the rules and some of the suggestions that are being made, to make sure that we learn from mistakes of others who have done other programs. Is the Short-Term Rental Advisory Committee doing that work, or is staff presenting?
Yeah, so staff has been doing that work. I know there's a number that we've looked at. It is a little difficult to compare an apple to an orange. Different jurisdictions, sometimes even different states have different regulations. But we are trying to kind of read between the lines and look at those programs on what could be considered within our region, or what's already being implemented in our region. That makes sense.
Great, I appreciate that, and I appreciate a lot of these. These are not new suggestions on the numbers and the year waiting period and the investors. Trying to make sure that we have facts on that before we set new policies. And I'll continue to share with everybody the 1989 RUDAT study that said we had 3,200 hotel and vacation home rentals back in 1989. So this isn't a new phenomena, but it has been, what we've learned is through VRBO and Airbnb, a much bigger issue than we had in the past. And so we need to make sure that we're accounting for that. And as Tony said, we don't have the hotel rooms that other destination resorts have. So making sure that we talk about that policy. And I guess I'm asking County Council and or Stephanie, our CEO, since the area plan is specific to the basin, and the policy I was talking about would extend beyond that to the whole region, what would be the instrument that we would consider? Would it be a board general policy? Would it be inserted into general plan? How would we, create that to be a policy of the board in moving forward on these if there are new hotel rooms constructed and the reduction in STRs?
We would have to look at the boundaries that you're proposing and determine whether it would be, at this point, my inclination is it might be a general plan policy. But as the STR only operates within the parameters of above 5,000 feet, we would want to tear it off of that. So I'd really have to look at it and see what's the best mechanism, such a policy, to bring forward to the board for consideration.
Okay. I would appreciate looking at that to see how we can do that. And then one other policy that I've mentioned to Stephanie that I've heard of in other jurisdictions is the limited number of days a year. That gets around the investor-owned issue, where you limit the number of days any owner could rent in a year. That would be a change, and we'd have to have feedback from the STR committee, but I'd love to hear their feedback on that, because other jurisdictions have, say, 90 days, and I think most of our rentals are below 120 days a year. So,
Yeah, correct.
taking a look at if that's enforceable. All this is about how do we enforce it, and what are the workarounds that people find in these things. So making sure we can enforce what we say we will do.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, the number of properties that are operating in that less than 20 days a year really does kind of fill the bulk of the operation.
Yeah.
There are some that are much more active. And just for clarity, the minimum number of nights is not a maximum. I think you're implying maybe there would be a maximum.
Right.
It is a minimum currently in the
Well,
ordinance.
I'm just saying there's other jurisdictions that have put a maximum in order to avoid investor-owned properties, so that they've said, there is a maximum number of nights versus a minimum, so.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
both?
I think we can continue to have that conversation. I think we also heard from people today regarding the waiting period. That is still part of the conversation as well. And so I think both of those issues kind of getting to the same root of concern over just flat out investments in investor properties in the
Right,
region.
because that's been at least a perception many have, and how accurate that is, that these are investor-owned, or if they are second homeowners who are supplementing their income when they're not using it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Gore, did you want to chime in?
I think I just want to say I appreciate the work that the working group has done to look at a couple of these issues. And it's a work in progress, but really appreciate some consensus to get rid of the 30-night minimum while we're growing out the program, right? And just seeing how that, until we get to a cap, because I think that it gives people flexibility, and we know that we need some flexibility. I am intrigued about the idea about talking about, as we bring in hotels, how do we just look at the maximum number of rooms available, STRs and hotel rooms, and what would be an appropriate number, and how we might balance that over time. So I'm intrigued by that idea, and I think that would be probably a really good conversation, especially as hopefully we actually get some hotels built, newer hotels built in the area to benefit the residents who would be coming here, and actually taking the burden off of the STR market. So anyway, I just appreciate the hard work, and I know we'll continue to work on these items, and we've come a long way. And it's really nice to not have a huge group of people here really, really upset. And there's some challenges still, but the fact that we've gotten to a place of having enforcement and having a way to regulate has been, I think, really helpful for the community. So thank you for your hard work. And this isn't a code enforcement time right now, but thanks to the code enforcement folks who've been doing a really good job.
Good. Supervisor Landon.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on the expiration of amnesty topic. I was trying to remember the last conversation when that was determined, and I think if I remember correctly, the intent was to give this grace period. So if it has expired, what would we need to do to extend that for them?
Yeah, so if it has expired, I think our intention is to bring an amendment to the ordinance to formalize your direction today in November. I do know that our code enforcement team is very aware of this issue and interested to hear your feedback of intent of how to apply that, and how you would like to see that come forward into the future. So they are taking sort of a soft approach to this during this time of discussion.
Okay, that sounds, I'm supportive of that. I feel like as we wait to get to a final kind of determination on it, it seems fair that they would have that time to figure it out, but that's just me personally.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, and so I'd like to know, is there any downside to extending the amnesty period?
Just time of conversion, right? I think that the ultimate goal is, to, allow for those properties to convert. So extending that would just be kind of pushing the goalpost, if you will, down the field a little bit. But we do want to recognize that your board's direction on that, and I think the intent that, historically bringing forward the operations that had been in place as we roll forward with this ordinance.
Yeah, well, there's really no downside. I would support that as well. Do you know or have any way to measure during peak seasons, like the vacancy rate or the fill rate, if you will, on hotels and STRs?
We do, yeah. In fact, NTCA helps us with that. They have a lodging barometer, they call it.
Okay.
We get that, I think, monthly. So they are tracking a number of the hotels of just occupancy in the region. We also work with our revenue services division. They can kind of help us identify the TOT that has been remitted. That has a lot of data behind it regarding occupancy of or activation of those STR permits as well.
So do we have times where everything is booked and we absolutely have no more room for anybody else to come and reserve?
I don't think there's ever a full occupancy time. I might look to Adam to help me out on that one, but yeah, there is sort of free board in the system for a majority of the year.
Okay, I'd be curious.
I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to, yeah. Oh,
If
thank you.
Adam will chime in, that would be great.
Absolutely. There are a few times when we probably get close to like 95, 96 during the holiday crunch periods. We are very rarely at 100% for a number of reasons, but we get very close to that
Good.
number. And what I did want to say is, in addition to the lodging barometer that she just said, we just launched this month a new community dashboard on the chamber website, northtahoechamber.com, that actually has all of that data. You can change the parameters to look at occupancy, both from a short-term rental occupancy and a hotel occupancy standpoint, along with another a whole bunch of other unique, interesting statistics around tourism and other aspects in the region here, specifically in our area. So I'd encourage you guys to go take a look at that, and you can see all of that on that new community dashboard.
Great. Why don't you guys send us all that
We
link?
can absolutely do that.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. So Stephanie, I think that's kind of a good barometer, like they call it, to see what our need is.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I have had conversations with Adam about feeding him some of that STR information as well to build that.
Okay, so I guess, did anybody else in the audience want to chime in? I'm going to bring it back to the board then. For any other comments, we received your presentation. Oh, I didn't. Is there anyone online that I left out?
There is no one.
Oh, thank goodness. So I think there's no action required on this one. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody who participated and all the comments. You don't realize how much your comments help us in what we do, in recommendations and stuff like that. Stephanie, to you and your team. Lindsay, thank you all so much. Nick, thank you to Nick as well. You have a great team. And so we'll keep at it until your STR ordinance is perfect. Hopefully one day. Okay, now we've reached that time for closed session. I'm going to turn it over to County Council.
The board will now adjourn to closed session to consider 3 items of existing litigation and also the continuance of the 2 items of potential litigation from yesterday's agenda.
Great. Thank you all for coming, those of you that won't be here when we come back. Welcome back, everyone. We've returned from closed session, and I'm going to turn it over to County Council.
The board met in closed session to consider the following under existing litigation. In re Rachel Cleveland, the board heard a report and provided direction on a 5-0 vote. In re Jacqueline Cumby, the board heard a report and provided direction on a 5-0 vote. In re Victor Platt, the board heard a report and provided direction on a 5-0 vote. The two items of potential litigation, under anticipated litigation, two potential cases, was continued from yesterday's closed session, 8/26, to today. The board heard further reports on these two matters, and on the first potential case, provided direction on a 5-0 vote. On the second potential case, again, the board heard further reports on the matter and provided direction on a 5-0 vote on the second potential case. This concludes the report out of closed session.
Okay. If there's nothing further to come before the board, anyone else? Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. See you next.